Greetings, Theophilus. I greet you in the name of the Lord and hope you are having a blessed day, and I invite you to sit down with me and follow along in this fifth episode as I try to find out what does the Bible actually say, and it might be beneficial to you. This will be our fifth episode, and we're doing the book of Malachi as introducing the book of Malachi. But before we get into that, I just wanted to make a quick invitation, as I do. I used to do these at the end, and now I find it much more beneficial to do these, get these done at the beginning. And it's my invitation to you, Theophilus, to if you're not going to, a church of your own, and you're in the Rhode Island area, you're certainly invited to come to my church. We are Embassy of Christ. Our temple is located at 1964 Smith Street, North Providence, Rhode Island. We also have a dining hall that is its own building, and because the building happens to be in a corner, it has its own address. So it's 649 Woonasquatucket Avenue. Don't ask me how to spell it. It's right on the screen for you. Woonasquatucket Avenue, North Providence, Rhode Island. And so we have a couple of events that we're doing, and you're invited to attend. Every Sunday at 10 a.m. we have our worship service. And after the service, we have our baptism and membership classes. Now, presently, if were you to attend now, Theophilus, it would be, I assume, too late for you to attend those. But just, a general announcement that these things are happening, and that people, when they come to our church, if they decide to become members, we do take this seriously, and you want to take a class so that you understand what it is that you're getting into. So what does baptism mean? What does membership in a church mean? We don't do... I like the way that Paul says it, I would not have you ignorant, brothers, and so he goes on to explain something. And so, we don't want to go into something blindly. We want to understand the serious choice that we're making as we become Christians or members of a church. So that's what those are about. On Mondays at 6:30, we have our prayer conference call, and you are welcome and invited to go ahead and call in. You would dial number 712-770-4711, and when prompted, enter code 660434. On Thursdays, we have our prayer and Bible study at 7 p.m. That's in the temple, so 1964 Smith Street. The gentlemen are doing a study called Trust and Confidence, and the ladies are doing the Art of Manipulation, which again is the art of recognizing manipulation and not using it yourself. It does not behoove us as Christians to do that. The one exception this week, this Thursday, there is no service this Thursday because tomorrow, Friday, the youth are having their coffee house, and so it is Friday, February 15th, 7 p.m. It will be in the dining hall, so 649 Woonasquatucket Avenue, North Providence. Theophilus, you are welcome to attend. Whether you go to your own church or attend services somewhere else, you are certainly invited to come to this event. It's open to everyone, and it's really a relaxed environment where we can come and we can fellowship together and we can have a good time together. And there is going to be, we do have an invited band that's coming over from Monte Sinai. I'm not sure if I've heard them before, but I've heard a lot of good things, and so I'm looking forward to it. I invite you to be there. The youth are also having, we're going out for bowling. That's going to be next Friday, the 22nd at 7 p.m. It's going to be in East Providence Lanes. We do have to RSVP for that, so if you are interested in going, please send me a message immediately on Facebook so that we need a good head count so that we know how many lanes we're going to rent and how much time we're going to need. So if you do intend on going, please let me know as soon as possible. Also, another announcement is that the dining hall is now available for rent. So if you have a special event that you would like to hold there, you can certainly reach out to our pastors and or send me a message. I'll put you in touch with them. And again, the address is 649 Woonasquatucket Avenue, and it is open and available for any events that you guys might want to schedule. And that's it for the announcements. We are now ready to get into the book proper, although I do need to introduce so it's going to be an introduction of the minor prophets, and then because this is the first minor prophet book that I'm introducing, and then introducing Malachi proper. So there are 17 prophet books in the the Old Testament. 5 of them are major prophets, and the 12 others are the minor prophets. Now they're called that not because they're less important, but because they tend to be much smaller in size. They were actually all traditionally they were all bundled together into a single scroll and called the 12. So it's just a collection of several prophets and their prophecies, their books, and they tended to be smaller than the five major prophets, and that's why they're called the minor prophets. Let's see. And that's pretty much it for the minor prophets. Now, Malachi, the book of Malachi, was written, give or take, 432, 425 BC. For our purposes, or for my purposes, for the sake of me visualizing it, I did write this little timeline, and I'm sure there's a couple of typos in here, but Malachi would have been written right about here. So nope, over here. So the Babylonian captivity was 605 BC, and so this would have been 200 years after that. So 200 years after the Babylonian captivity, but 400 years before Christ. Because Malachi is the last prophet to speak to Israel. So he is, after him, there was a 400-year silence where God didn't talk to, there were no prophets, there was no speaking to Israel, there was nothing, no word from God until John the Baptist came. And so this is God's last, come on guys, let's get this right. So he preached to Israel when they had come back from the Babylonian captivity, but they rebuilt the wall. I believe they rebuilt the temple, but there was still a lot of corruption and a lot of wickedness going on, a lot of things that were happening that God was obviously opposed to, and he wanted to bring them back to himself, to goodness, to security. But they had grown really. There was like a false sense of security because of their privileged relationship with God. And this happens a lot in the Old Testament, but also with Christians today, where we feel like, or at least a lot of Christians feel like, oh, I'm a Christian, and so I'm close to God, and so I get to do all kinds of things that you can't. That's a false sense of security, and it's not helping as far as convincing others that being a Christian is a good thing. But God is saying to them and to us, if you're gonna, I want you to follow me because it is for your good, it is for your benefit. But that doesn't then make you, reach some sort of privilege where you're like, okay, now I can do, things that, that are unbecoming. And that's, a lot of people take that as a license, like, oh, I'm a Christian now. Now I can do, all kinds of different things. I'm in now. God's on my side. No. Keep this in your head, Theophilus, if you can. Either you are on God's side or you're not. That's it. It's not about God being on your side. That's not how it works. I was in a Bible study and we talked about, excuse me, there was I think it was Joshua who was about to have a battle, and an angel of the Lord came down disguised as a man, and Joshua went out to him and said, are you on our side or on their side? And the angel said, no, Joshua, I'm God. You're either on my side or you're not. That's the perspective, and that's what Malachi was preaching to Israel. It's like, come on, guys, you need to bring it back, and drop your backsliding and get serious about God. Get serious about doing good. Get serious about being good to your neighbor. And so it's not a unique message, because a lot of the prophets were saying that. It was unique in the way that that Malachi did it. I may be getting ahead of myself. I've lost my place in my notes here. Let's see. There it was. The word Malachi, his name, it means my messenger, and it refers to himself, but also to John the Baptist, whom he prophesied. Again, 400 years before the birth of Christ, before the birth of John the Baptist, he prophesied the coming of John, and that's in verse 3:1, which I believe is the chapter that we're reading today, so we'll get to see that. Malachi preached during the Persian dominion of Israel. So let me bring that timeline back up. And I need to switch this so that you guys can see my screen. So here's the timeline. So the Babylonian captivity was 605 BC. 200 years after that, they're back in Jerusalem, or at least many of them were. And I'm sorry. I'm getting chronologically confused. Babylonian captivity. Israel, sinned. They rebelled against God. God said, all right, it's over. You're going to get defeated by your enemies. You're going to get carried away to Babylon. While they're there, Daniel gives this prophecy to the king, and he speaks about the four kingdoms. And they are in this order: Babylon, uh, the Medial Persian Empire, the Medes and the Persians. Directly after them, the Greeks, and then directly after them, the Romans. And that carries through, over centuries. It carries through all the way to Christ. And so here, Babylonian captivity, the Persians, the Greeks, and then the Romans, and then Christ. So the Persians were presently in charge when Malachi was preaching. So the Greeks hadn't come over yet, and so that would, that's about 400. I'm trying to point just generally in this area here, but 425 or 35 BC. And so let me switch this back, and let me switch myself back to my notes so I can keep going. Malachi uses a question and answer style. I'm tempted to call it a Socratic method, but Socrates, he was actually born, I believe, a couple of years before Malachi, about around that time, 400 BC. Socrates was, but like I said, the Greeks didn't come into the picture, at least not to Israel, until years later. So. But like I said, there's a lot of question and answer in the book, and so it kind of follows the same structure, and you'll see it when we're reading it. The structure is, God says, "You have robbed me," and the people say, "Well, how have we robbed you?" And then God says, "You've robbed me in tithes and offerings," and different examples follow, but it's the same structure. This is happening. How is this happening? This is how it's happening, and it's like that. It's just God just laying it out, like, this is what you're doing, and you should know better. Now let's see. Through Malachi, God tells Israel that their lack of blessing was not because it was because of their own corruption, and not because God had a lack of concern for them. God cared, but at the same time, they were the ones who were being corrupt. They were the ones who were abusing God's grace. And so that's what Malachi gets into, and that is the introduction to Malachi. So I think we're ready now for the actual reading portion. I need to switch this back over to here. And I am ready to begin the reading, except that I also need to get my Bible over here and get it into Malachi 3. Okay. The reading brought to you again by Bible Gateway, as read by the King James Version, as read by, where's the guy's name? Max McLean. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Love his voice. A little over dramatic, but I think it works well.
Malachi 3. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in, behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. But who may abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old, and as in former years. And I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, and against the adulterers, and against false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow, and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, saith the Lord of hosts. For I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. Even from the days of your fathers ye are gone away from mine ordinances, and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. But ye said, Wherein shall we return? Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, Wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. And all nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts. Your words have been stout against me, saith the Lord. Yet ye say, What have we spoken so much against thee? Ye have said, It is vain to serve God. And what profit is it that we have kept his ordinance, and that we have walked mournfully before the Lord of hosts? And now we call the proud happy, yea, they that work wickedness are set up. Yea, they that tempt God are even delivered. Then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord, and that thought upon his name. And they shall be mine, saith the Lord of hosts, in that day, when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them, as a man spareth his own son that serveth him. Then shall ye return, and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth God, and him that serveth him not.
Pause. I have to remember to pause, otherwise he just keeps going into the next chapter. And talks over me, and I can't have that. A lot of goodies in here, and I meant to mention this in the introduction, but it's here, so I'll get into it. As I said in the intro, behold, I will send my messenger. This is a reference and a prophecy of John the Baptist. What are the qualities? He shall prepare the way before me. And the Lord, whom ye seek, shall suddenly come to his temple. Even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in. Behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. This is the voice crying out in the wilderness, which is another prophecy about John the Baptist. He's the messenger that's going to come and make the path straight, prepare the way before me. He's the one who's going to bring the hearts of Israel to understand that the Messiah is coming. So a lot of people went to him to the Jordan River to be baptized, and he was preaching to them, and a lot of people listened to him. So he made John the Baptist did a great work in Jerusalem, in that a lot of people started to turn back to God. I guess in a way he was almost finishing what Malachi had tried to start. Maybe I want to take that back, since there's like a 400-year gap between the two, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Malachi is saying, come back to the Lord. It does say that in several verses here. Come back to me, and I shall return to you. It was the same message that John the Baptist was preaching. Repent ye, for the day of the Lord is nigh. The one cometh after me, whose sandals I am not unworthy to loose. So it's the same message. Come back to me. It's for different reasons. Malachi says, it's because these things are happening to you because you've separated yourself from me. Come to me, and I will shut the devourer's mouth against you. But John the Baptist is saying, same message. Come back to God. Do righteous. Do the right thing before God. But the reason for it was because of Christ, because Christ is coming. Be ready to receive him. And some were, and some were not. So that's the bit of prophecy. I copied these two verses. Is it two? No, this is three. No, here it is. 4 and 5. I copied them for separate reasons, but they fall one right on top of the other. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord. Then, future tense, because it's not now. The offering of Judah and Jerusalem was not pleasant before the sight of the Lord. And this was part of the introduction, that even the priesthood was corrupt in how they were doing the offerings unto God. Either they weren't doing them at all, or they weren't doing them properly. And so it marks a difference. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old, and as in former years. So it will be pleasant unto the Lord, as it used to be pleasant unto the Lord, but it is not presently unto the Lord. Now, why is that? All right, let's get into the details then. chapter 5, verse 5 tells us, and I will come near unto you, I will come near unto you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against sorcerers, against adulterers, against false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages. So, witch doctors, those who break their marriage covenant, those who lie, and those who oppress the hirelings in his wages. That's against those people who hire people and then don't pay them for it. Those who, I'm sorry, I spoke too soon. Those who oppress, and here's a list. The hireling in his wages, hey, he did the work, pay him. The widow, those who oppress them because you shouldn't. The fatherless, orphans, those who oppress them because you shouldn't. These are people whom God is against. Those who oppress the hirelings, the widow, and the fatherless. And so this is a fourth person who God oppresses. Who God opposes. Those who oppress and turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me. This is another, a lot of people like to, point and say, the Israelites were no different from any other people. They were as cruel, or they were as wicked, or there were certainly times. In many ways, they were, but they weren't supposed to be, and that's the point. God is specifically telling them, you are supposed to be different. In several places, God told them, I don't want you to oppress the stranger. I do not want you to oppress the sojourner. If someone comes from another country to your country, you treat them right. Because you were strangers in the land of Egypt, I want you to treat people right. And this is another thing that God is listing against them. These are your sins, Israel. You've got sorcerers, adulterers, and people who swear falsely. How can anybody take you seriously? So these are people who are, these two at least, adulterers and false swearers, are breaking a covenant. Here's someone who is married. I have sworn myself, I have bound myself to a spouse, and I'm breaking that covenant. I am swearing before you that what I am saying is true, because my testimony is necessary for some sort of proceeding that's happening. Oh wait, my testimony is false. I am now making difficult everybody's life just because I'm lying. These are the people whom God is against, and these are the people who Israel is doing very little about. And what does that result in? It results in, widows, orphans, and foreigners being abused, and God is against that. And fear not me. These people who do these things, they don't fear God. They don't care about God. They don't take God seriously. And that's the problem. Verse 8. This is every time... Okay, so the Theophilus, you may or may not be in on this joke. I kind of am. Whenever I'm in church and we turn to Malachi, I can't think of a... There might have been, but I can't think of a simple example off the top of my head where we reach into Malachi and it's pretty much always this verse, and it's pretty much always around the time of the tithes and the offerings. That's so it's like as soon as I hear Malachi, I kind of smile because I'm like, I know exactly where you're going with it. Any other book in the Bible, there might be different prophecies or stories or verses or things that are going to be said. In Malachi, it's almost always this. Hey, it's time for the offering. Let's go ahead and get a Bible verse that talks about it. Will a man rob God? But ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherewith have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Look, tithes and offerings, they are a commandment. God said, listen, we've got this temple here. There are services that are being done. The priests are serving. They need to get fed. So here's each of you has to bring your tithes and offerings. And this all started, I believe, with Jacob. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So Jacob, who was renamed Israel. So the nation of Israel is named after him. And he received that name from God. It was it was an angel who said, you will no longer be called Jacob, you will be called Israel, because you have strived with God. And I believe it was at that moment when he said, I will he didn't say tithe, but I will give a portion of my earnings to God and to his work. And so it's been that way, since then. So both in the Jewish tradition and in the Christian tradition, there, you go to a service, you go to a temple, you go there, you tithe, and you offer, if you remember, and also if it is entirely voluntary, but at the same time, God is saying, listen, this is an important part of your reasonable service to me. And so when you hold it back, you are robbing me. Now, I have given you everything. I'm asking you for a percentage of what gains you have. And for what? So that the temple can function, so that they can be watchful over your souls. So it's a win-win, but people, still held it back. So while I do smile when I hear it in the church, because I know where they're going with it, I don't have an issue with it. I don't have a conflict with it. I'm here. I'm here. I'm serving God. God asked me to do it, and I do it not just because of obedience, which is important, but I genuinely feel like, this is not just this is what I have to do, but this is what I can do. You know what I mean? Like my position is, and I've always, not always, but I felt this way for a long time. If I can give to God, it's like, where does that ability come from? It's like, God owes me nothing. I owe God everything. And and so in our tradition, the tithe is 10%. I give 10% of what I earn. Now, I would earn nothing but for God. So the fact that I can give 10%, that's a privilege. And, and if I can give more, I do give more. So I just take that position. It's like, it's not just, I got to figure out my tithe so that I can pay it because I have to. If that's your attitude, God forgive me, but if that's your attitude, I think maybe you shouldn't. Go ahead and hold back the tithe. Wait till God smacks you around a little bit. In my heart, and I hope that this would also be your heart, is that I am capable of tithing. I have something to tithe with. Let me go ahead and do that. That's, God has blessed me with what I have. Why don't I go ahead and give him 10%? Why don't I go ahead and give him more? Because I can. Because he allows it. Because he let me. It just makes sense. That's what's in your heart. Where is your heart? Where is your treasure? That is where your heart is also. And also, by the way, in making it a percentage, it's always fair. What I mean by that is, if it was like a static amount, then it would be easy for someone who's rich to just, give it away. And it would be hard for others to reach that amount. Like if it was a static amount, some will struggle to make it and some won't even care. But it's proportional. It's 10%. Did you make almost nothing? Then you give 10%, and that's 1/10 of almost nothing. If you made a whole lot, it might hurt you a lot more to give, 10% of a very large amount. But that's what's in your heart. And that, it's revealing not to us against each other, but to you and God. What is your feeling? What is your heart? And that's, I think it works well where it's like, it's that percentage. That's the bare minimum. Let's put it that way. 10% is the minimum. And so, even in the New Testament, there's a story of, Jesus in the temple, and there's a poor widow who puts in I think they called it a mite, 2 mites, or the widow's mite. And it wasn't a lot, but it was everything she had. And Jesus comments on it. He says, people are giving out their chunk change. Keep the change. It's like, yeah, let me take this change and put it in the offering plate. This woman gave everything she had, and that is the difference. Where is her heart versus where is my heart? How much am I giving to God? That's personal. It's between me and God, but between you and God, Theophilus, I hope that your heart is where I believe it should be. That you feel it within yourself, not that you have to give, but that you want to give. You do have to give, but that your desire would be, I want to bless God's work. I want to be a part of what God is doing. And this is the minimum that I can do. Let me at least do that because I can. Let me do more because I can. Enough said. Now, why? Why do we do it? I mean, you should do it because you feel grateful. You feel grateful to God for the things that you have. But there is a challenge here, and this is something that it is remarkable in that it is unique. It's here in verse 10. Bring ye the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. This is a very unique verse in that this is the only time where God says, go ahead and prove me in this. When Christ was tempted by Satan, one of the things that that he said to him was, hey, if you're the Son of God, then why don't you cast yourself down from this tall building, and the angels will bear you up so that you don't hurt yourself. Jesus' answer was, it is written, you will not tempt the Lord. You will not put God to the test. God is not going to jump through hoops for your sake. Except here. This is the only verse that actually where God himself is speaking, and he says, go ahead and prove me in this. Go ahead and try me. You bring your tithes and your offerings, you bring your tithes and offerings faithfully into my house, and see what happens. See if I don't bless you. That's the challenge, and it's unique in that it just doesn't happen. That's not, God never takes that position where he says, hey, do this for me and I'll do this for you. If the book of Job, the point of that whole book was God doesn't owe you anything. Period. But here he stops and says, go ahead. Bring your tithes and offerings. Bring them with a glad heart. And see what happens. See if I don't bless you. That's interesting. And that's promising. Last verse that I copied, and I've now forgotten why, but let's go ahead and read it and find out. Ye say, ye have said, it is vain to serve God. What profit is it that we have? What profit is it that we have kept his ordinance, and that we have walked mournfully before the Lord of hosts? Oh, there's so much here. I don't know if I have time to get into it. Theophilus, how often have you heard this? How often have you thought this yourself? Or how often have you heard it from others? Oh, why bother serving God? It is vain to serve God. There's no point in it. Why do you go to church? Why do you read the Bible? Why do you want to take God seriously? Why do you suffer for God's sake? Why don't you go out and party with us? Why don't you go, why don't you take this substance that makes you all inebriated so that you're not responsible for your own choices? As if, why do you serve God? That's the question. Why bother? He doesn't exist. If he does exist, he doesn't care. That's the world's attitude. I want to do what I want to do. Why don't you want to do these things with me? Why do you bother serving God? Why do you bother restricting yourself because of what some dusty old book says? That's the world's attitude. The next question, and it's still the world talking. What profit is that we have in his ordinance? Why do you do it? What's God going to do for me? What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of it? What have you been getting out of it? You're just suffering for no apparent reason. That's the world's attitude. Now, there's a little turn here. That we have walked mournfully before the Lord of hosts. It's the question that I got into before. What's in your heart? What is it that matters to you? It's like there's a difference between I'm giving my tithes and offerings and because I have to, and I'm giving my tithes and offerings because I want to, because it is in my heart. It's my desire. It's my attitude is that it's the minimum. I forget which verse it is, but it's somewhere in the New Testament. I think it was Paul who was saying, don't make it so that your pastors are praying to God. Like your pastors are suffering because they're begrudgingly, excuse me, you're making their hard, I'm confusing myself. You're making their work harder because you're being difficult. Like don't make the people who are above you, who are looking out for you, like work so hard. Don't make it hard for them. Help them out. And that's the mournfully is the word that jumps out at me in this verse. Are you going to, do you do what you do because you have to, or do you do it because you want to? That's the difference, and that's something that we should look out for, that we should be aware of. If you're serving God mournfully for the sake of, checking a few boxes, scoring points for the afterlife, and thinking that because you obeyed and didn't go with the world, that God owes you something, one, you're wrong. You got the wrong attitude, and two, you're not obeying God. You're not, you can't, you obey every letter of the law, but you ignore the heart of it. God is not, I've said this before, God is not a machine. He's not a vending machine where you put in change and you get a Coke out of it. Okay, this is not, I was struggling to come up with a better analogy, but that's the perfect one. God is not a vending machine. You don't score points for the afterlife and then cash them in for blessings. That's not how it works. Nor should it be. Remember, God is a person. Okay, this is a relationship. This is an exchange. God is not a machine. He's a person. And so you approach him as a person. Someone who owes you nothing, but is offering you everything. That's a difference. So I think we're ready to go into Proverbs 1. Scroll. Play.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 1.
He's moving too fast.
The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear, and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels, to understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. For they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, Come with us, let us lay wait for blood. Let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down into the pit. We shall find all precious substance, we shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us, let us all have one purse. My son, walk not thou in the way with them. Refrain thy foot from their path. For their feet run to evil, and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird, and they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. So are the ways of every one that is greedy of gain, which taketh away the life of the owners thereof. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. She crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates. In the city she uttereth her words, saying, How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn you at my reproof, behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. Because I have called, and ye refused. I have stretched out my hand, and no man regarded. But ye have set at naught all my counsel, and would none of my reproof. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. For that they hated knowledge, and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would none of my counsel, they despised all my reproof. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way, and be filled with their own devices. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. But whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from fear of evil.
Pause. A lot of goodies there, but I only copied so much. And I do want to look up, I have a highlight here. I just want to take a look at that note. An argument against communism, question mark. That's interesting. So I just want to remind myself of what that was. And are we doing that now? Yes, we are. So verses 13 and 14. We will find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. This is the evildoers talking. And they say to you, Theophilus, cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. I don't know enough about economic theory to understand the ins and outs of communism. I've just been told that it's a bad thing, and I just trust that it is. Cast in thy lot with us. Let us all have one purse. We all have separate purses, but yes, let's pool our money together, in this case to do evil, which is a bad idea. God is saying don't be them, and don't join them. And I guess this is a warning to us. Hey, put in your lot with us, put in your money with us. Don't do that. But like I said, I don't know too much about communism to understand its ins and outs, or its ups or downs. Generally, I understand that that there's no, there is currency. I just don't know how it works. Generally, it's my understanding that you have a job and you go ahead and do it, and any need that you have will be provided by everybody else, because everyone is forced to work. And the problems with that, as I understand it, is that is it complacency? Instead of doing a good job, you just end up doing the bare minimum because that's what you're required to do by the state. And so you don't strive for a good product or a good outcome, because you want to, or because there's any incentive for you to. Better work requires better wages, and so in communism, I guess that doesn't exist. Everything is flat. I keep banging the mic. I'm sorry. Like I said, I don't know too much about economic theory, so I might have that all wrong. It's just a question in my mind. It's like, is that a stab at communism? Because obviously, the Jewish tradition was, for the most part, against that. There were a couple of tenets where God wanted each family to maintain their own house, and so at the year of Jubilee, no matter how in debt they were, they could still get their land back. That was how God set it up. But beyond that, it was pretty much capitalistic, and it's like, you work, you get paid, and then you pay for the things that you need. And there should also be charity, that people should look out for for widows and for orphans. And there's plenty of verses that get into that, and there were verses that we got into today that got into that. But generally, it's capitalistic and not communistic. Now this one was interesting. It's the 20 to 23. It's a long one though. Wisdom crieth without. She uttereth her voice in the streets. She crieth in the chief place of the concourse, in the openings of the gates, in the city, and uttereth her words, saying, how long shall ye simple ones will ye love simplicity? And scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn ye at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. Oh, there's a lot there, and I want to take it one at a time. Wisdom crieth without. Now, wisdom is personified as she here, but which is fine. There's so many. You know, we refer to God as He because that's how He's referred to in the Bible. But does God have a sex? Is there, you know, we human beings were designed, male and female, created He him, created He them. I don't know if those same terms apply to God. I just assume that the use of He is just for our sake, for our own comfort and understanding. I don't assume that that they apply the same way. So mentally, I'm aware of it. At the same time, for the sake of simplicity and tradition, I do use the moniker He. But in this instance, wisdom is a she. But that's not where I wanted to go. Where I wanted to go was here. Wisdom crieth without, crieth in the streets. A street preacher. Street preachers, as if you've lived in New York, Theophilus, you go into the subway, you see them pretty much everywhere. You do see them in some places here in Providence too, but it's a good thing that there are people who are preaching in the streets. And who else are they? They're the prophets who are out there crying out to Jerusalem, saying, "Hey, come back to me," says the Lord. And they're crying in the concourse, so they're crying in open places. They're publishing it to the people, and what are they saying? How long will ye simple ones love simplicity? How long will ye scorners delight in scorning? How long will ye fools hate knowledge? I've seen enough posts on Facebook where where the question is, hey, if I had not known about, if you hadn't preached to me about God, would I still go to hell, or do I get a chance to go to heaven because I didn't know? And the answer that sometimes there is, well, maybe God would have had mercy upon you if you didn't know. And then the answer is, oh, well, then why did you tell me? Now you made it all hard on me because you told me about God. Again, Paul says, I will not have you ignorant, brothers. I want you to know what the truth is. I want you to know what's what. But there are so many who are like, look, leave me alone. Leave me to my own ignorance. I don't want to know. Because now that I know, I got to do something about it. So how long will ye fools hate knowledge? So here's the advice. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, if you will turn at my reproof, if you will listen, if you will hearken unto my words, then I will pour out my spirit unto you, and I will make known my words unto you. You receive knowledge. You put away ignorance from you. This is a good thing. Now it requires you to take action afterwards. Now that you know the situation that you're in, you need to do something about it. You went to the doctor and your numbers were off, your sugar's too high, your blood pressure's too high, or something is off, and he turns to you and says, I want you to do this exercise every day, or I want you to take these pills, or I want you to keep an eye on this. Hey, I want you to stop eating this. I want you to go do something else. It's the same reaction. Oh, come on, doc. I really like this type of food. Oh, I don't want to take, this type of medicine. Oh, doc, I just can't be bothered to do these exercises every single day. It's like whatever the advice is, it's like bad news to you because it's like, oh, I got to do something. That sucks. Is the doctor trying to make you better, or is he just trying to be annoying? Being annoying is not the point. Keeping you better or making you better is the point. And it's the same situation here. Physically and spiritually. Once you have the knowledge of what is wrong, you have to do something about it to make it right. And it's that we're opposed to. We hate knowledge. Because knowledge requires action. Once you know, then you're either ignorant by ignoring good advice, or you're healthy. Moving to 31. Therefore shall they eat the fruit of their own way, and be filled with their own devices. I guess 31 is the consequence of ignorance. When we ignore God, when we it's like I said before, once you know what it is, what the truth is, once knowledge is given to you, you have to take action. And if you don't, or if your action is to go the other way, to either ignore it or to push it away from you, then the result is natural. If you don't water the plant, it's going to wither and die. That's just the natural consequence. What goes around comes around. Karma. Therefore shall they eat the fruit of their own way and be filled with their own devices. Some might say, oh, God is cursing them, or God is going out of his way to make things difficult. I'd say, look, it's just nature. Gravity points down. You either get up and move around, or you just sit there and rot. It's up to you. Deuteronomy 9. I forgot where here.
Deuteronomy 9. Hear, O Israel, thou art to pass over Jordan this day, to go in to possess nations greater and mightier than thyself,
Ooh.
cities great and fenced up to heaven, a people great and tall, the children of the Anakims, whom thou knowest, and of whom thou hast heard say, who can stand before the children of Anak? Understand therefore this day that the Lord thy God is he which goeth over before thee as a consuming fire. He shall destroy them, and he shall bring them down before thy face. So shalt thou drive them out, and destroy them quickly, as the Lord hath said unto thee. Speak not thou in thine heart, after that the Lord thy God hath cast them out from before thee, saying, For my righteousness the Lord hath brought me in to possess this land. But for the wickedness of these nations the Lord doth drive them out from before thee, not for thy righteousness, or for the uprightness of thine heart dost thou go to possess their land, but for the wickedness of these nations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee, and that he may perform the word which the Lord sware unto thy fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Understand therefore that the Lord thy God giveth thee not this good land to possess it for thy righteousness, for thou art a stiff-necked people. Remember, and forget not, how thou provokest the Lord thy God to wrath in the wilderness, from the day that thou didst depart out of the land of Egypt, until ye came unto this place. Ye have been rebellious against the Lord. Also in Oreb ye provoked the Lord to wrath, so that the Lord was angry with you to have destroyed you. When I was gone up into the mount to receive the tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant which the Lord made with you, then I abode in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. I neither did eat bread nor drink water. And the Lord delivered unto me 2 tables of stone written with the finger of God, and on them was written according to all the words which the Lord spake with you in the mount out of the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days and 40 nights, that the Lord gave me the 2 tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant. And the Lord said unto me, Arise, get thee down quickly from hence, for thy people which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They are quickly turned aside out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten image. Furthermore the Lord spake unto me, saying, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Let me alone, that I may destroy them, and blot out their name from under heaven. And I will make of thee a nation mightier and greater than they. So I turned, and came down from the mount, and the mount burned with fire, and the 2 tables of the covenant were in my 2 hands. And I looked, and behold, ye had sinned against the Lord your God, and had made you a molten calf. Ye had turned aside quickly out of the way which the Lord had commanded you. And I took the 2 tables, and cast them out of my 2 hands, and brake them before your eyes. And I fell down before the Lord as at the first, 40 days and 40 nights. I did neither eat bread nor drink water, because of all your sins which ye sinned, in doing wickedly in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. For I was afraid of the anger and hot displeasure, wherewith the Lord was wroth against you to destroy you. But the Lord hearkened unto me at that time also. And the Lord was very angry with Aaron to have destroyed him. And I prayed for Aaron also the same time. And I took your sin, the calf which ye had made, and burnt it with fire, and stamped it, and ground it very small, even until it was as small as dust. And I cast the dust thereof into the brook that descended out of the mount. And at Taberah, and at Massah, and at Kibroth Hattaavah, ye provoked the Lord to wrath. Likewise, when the Lord sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, Go up and possess the land which I have given you, then ye rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God, and ye believed him not, nor hearkened to his voice. Ye have been rebellious against the Lord from the day that I knew you. Thus I fell down before the Lord 40 days and 40 nights, as I fell down at the first, because the Lord had said he would destroy you. I prayed therefore unto the Lord, and said, O Lord God, destroy not thy people and thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed through thy greatness, which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Remember thy servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Look not unto the stubbornness of this people, nor to their wickedness, nor to their sin, lest the land whence thou broughtest us out say, Because the Lord was not able to bring them into the land which he promised them, and because he hated them, he hath brought them out to slay them in the wilderness. Yet they are thy people, and thine inheritance, which thou broughtest out by thy mighty power, and by thy stretched out arm.
Pause. There is a lot that I need to copy here, and a lot that I need to say, especially in the way of setup. Deuteronomy is what I like to say about this book is that it's God saying, "I'm telling you, for the second time." That's what Deuteronomy means. I'm telling you over again. If you look at the structure of the Pentateuch, there's the 5 books of the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Genesis is from creation to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when they go into, or at least Jacob and his house and his servants when they go into Egypt, and they are slaves there for 400 years until Moses comes over in Exodus. And in Exodus, that's, let my people go, the crossing of the Red Sea, that's where that happens. Directly after that, they go to Mount... Oh, I'm blanking on this. Sinai? I think it was Sinai. The mountain where God gives the 10 Commandments. Leviticus is where Moses gives the people God's law. He outright, says, these are the laws that we're going to live by. The priests are going to do this, and we're going to build the temple, and we're going to build a tabernacle, and this is how we're going to serve God. And these are the different sacrifices that we're going to do for different sins. The book of Numbers is called that because there were 2 censuses that happen. They come to the Promised Land before they cross into the Promised Land, before they cross Jordan. They send out spies, and so the spies look out on the land, and they send out 12 spies, and 2 of them come back and say, well, they all together say, it's a great land, it's awesome, it's fruitful, it's luscious, it's a good land. But then they differed on the ability of them to take it. God said, 2 of them said, 10 of them said, there's a lot of very powerful people there. They're very tall. The cities are walled. They're armored. We can't fight these people. We're not going to be able to do it. 2 of them said, listen, guys, God is with us. There's no reason for us to turn back now. Now, because the 10 prevailed, they convinced the rest of the nation that they weren't going to be able to do it. Then God said, all right, you don't want the Promised Land. That's fine. Turn around. Go back into the desert. You guys are going to wander there for 40 years. Before they did the first census, before all this happened, and then God says, all right, you're going to go into the desert, you're going to wander for 40 years. And every single person, I believe, that was 20 years old and upward, who was older than 20, at the time of this event, they all died in the desert. And so the people who came back at the end of the 40 years, the only people who were alive that were older than 20, who were still around, was Moses, Joshua, and Caleb. Moses, the guy who was leading them the whole time, Joshua and Caleb, the two spies that said, hey, we can take this land, don't you guys worry. Everybody else was dead. They did another census, and they confirmed that. Everybody who was 20 years old and up and higher, who was there at the rebellion when the first time when they said, we can't do this, they all died in the desert. And so the people who came back, they were all a brand new people. Now, they all grew up together, so they all know the traditions, they all know the stories. But in Deuteronomy, God is essentially, it's almost a repeat of Leviticus. Leviticus, Moses gives them the law. Deuteronomy, Moses is giving them the law again. And he's doing it to a people who I guess didn't hear it firsthand. Now they're hearing it again directly from Moses. And it's happening just before they go into the land. I think that's what verse 1 says. Is that among the ones that I copied? It's not. Hear, O Israel, that thou art to pass over this Jordan, and to go and to possess nations greater and mightier than thyself, cities great and fenced up to heaven. So, nothing's different. God is saying, hey, it's gonna, it's a tough nut to crack. These are very defensed cities. And it's a very mighty people. But He is saying to them, I'm going to be with you. Go over. I'm going to go before you. Verse 4, speak not thou in thine heart after that the Lord hath cast them out from before thee, saying, for my righteousness. I'm sorry. So in verses 2 and 3, God says, I am casting them out. I am going to be a fire in front of you. I am going to be casting these folks out, and you're going to be able to take this land quickly and relatively easily. God pauses in verse 4, and He says, hold on now. This is what's going to happen, but I want you to guard your heart against this. Speak not thou in thine heart, for my righteousness hath the Lord brought me into possess this land. No. That's not it. Don't, again, Theophilus, what's in your heart? Is it, because I'm so awesome, God has given me this land? No, that's not it. It's not because you're awesome, it's because they were wicked. But for the wickedness of these nations, the Lord doth drive them out from before thee. So keep that perspective in mind, because the day you forget it is when you start to fall apart, and that's when you start to fall away from God, and that's really the beginning of it. When you start to think that was the it's what Malachi was preaching about. You guys have this false sense of security, thinking, oh, we're God's people, and so we get to do whatever we want. No, it's not for my righteousness that we are going to possess this land. It is because of the wickedness of the nations that are there. God is going to drive them out because they are wicked, not because we are good. Not for thy righteousness, or for the uprightness of thine heart doth thou go in to possess their land, but for the wickedness of these nations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee, that He may perform the word which the Lord sware unto thy fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Do I still have this? Let me see. So yeah, here's the flood. Here is God's covenant with Abraham. So it's 2000 BC. God makes a promise to Abraham to create a nation for him in him, and he has his son Isaac, and then his son has another son. His name is Jacob, and Jacob has several sons, among them the 12. His 12 sons are the 12 patriarchs, the different tribes of Israel. And by the time they went into Egypt, there were 70 of them. So they went into Egypt, and they were there 400 years, and they grew by number into a great nation in Egypt. So it's almost as if Egypt gave birth to them, but they were their own thing. So here it is. Israel leaves Egypt at 1504 BC. They left, and like I said, they had they went to Mount, I believe it was Sinai. They went to Mount Sinai. They received the laws. They built the golden calf. Moses, he's giving them, in Deuteronomy, in this chapter that we just listened to, Moses was pretty much summarizing and recapping. Someone just dropped off a chunk of cake for me, which I will eat later. And now I'm totally derailed. Let's get back on track. Mount Sinai. They're there. They get God's laws, and they sin. Moses was gone too long. They say they built the golden calf. They wanted to make themselves a god to go before them so that they could go back into Egypt. They were slaves there for 400 years, but they figured it's better than what we got now. Let's go back into Egypt. Moses is now in the verse. I'm sorry, in the chapter that we just read, that already happened. That happened 40 years ago, and so it's 40 years after the fact. Moses is preaching. He's telling them the story all over again. I'm sure a story that they've already heard from their own fathers. But Moses is telling them again, listen, I'm summarizing this for you because there's a lot of things that happened before and they need to not happen again. The last time that we had this problem, God said, all right, you don't want it, you can't have it, go into the desert. You're going to die out there and your kids are the ones who are going to inherit the land. Moses is now with them. They're in front of Jordan. They're about to go into the promised land. And he's summarizing for them. These are the things that happened before. Let's not do the same thing. That's what's happening in Deuteronomy. Now, so it's because of their wickedness that you're going to possess their land and not because of your righteousness. So let's keep that in mind. And also, and this is why I pulled up the timeline, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that was 400 years ago. That was 440 years ago. 480 years ago that he made that promise. And so it's a prophecy coming true, but he's also warning them, listen, this prophecy was already postponed 40 years because your fathers didn't think that God was who he says he was. They didn't trust in God to help them conquer this land. And so God is going to help you conquer this land, but you need to keep the right mindset. It's not for your righteousness. It is for their wickedness that this is happening. Let's keep the right perspective. Verse 12, and the Lord said unto me, arise, get thee down quickly from hence, for thy people which... Okay, so this is Moses telling the story of what happened. And it's God, in this part of the story, God is speaking to Moses. He says, and so the Lord said unto me, arise, get thee down quickly from hence, for thy people which thou hast brought out of Egypt has corrupted themselves. They are quickly turned aside out of the way which I commanded them, and they have made them a molten image. There's a joke here, and I'm going to share it with you, because I forgot where I heard it, but it stayed with me. It's this. God is the one who's talking, and he says, for thy people, which thou hast brought out of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. And so the joke is this, they are God's people. That's who Israel is. Israel is God's people. And all of a sudden, because they have corrupted themselves, now all of a sudden, God says to Moses, for thy people, not my people, thy people have corrupted themselves. It's a silly little joke, but they're still God's people. But God does frame it that way. It says it that way, and I take that as a joke. They've quickly turned aside, and so like I said, they Moses was gone too long, and so they just went back to their old ways, and they said, you know what? Let's make ourselves a god. Let's go ahead and break that first commandment that Moses gave us in Exodus 20, and let's go ahead and make a molten image so that we can do what? So that we can go back to Egypt and be slaves again. Because it's better than what we got here. It's better than going forward and trying to possess a land that God promised he would help us, conquer. What happens? It says in chapter 9 that we read, but also in when it happened, because it is recorded earlier what happened. This is just Moses telling the story over again. God turns to Moses and he says, listen, let me destroy these people. Like, I'm gonna wipe them all out. I'm gonna start over. I'm gonna make a nation out of you, Moses. Moses turns around and he says, God, don't do this. Don't go down that path. And this was an argument that I had with my aunt for a very long time, where I took the position that God was just testing Moses, saying to him that he was going to destroy Israel, but he was never actually going to do it. My aunt's position was that Moses Moses genuinely turned God away from making that choice. That God was genuinely going to go ahead and destroy Israel right there and then, but that Moses changed his mind. Now, to me, that was ludicrous. How can anybody change God's mind? But I've slowly evolved from that position. I've slowly warmed to her position, and it's here's why. Because again, God owes me nothing. God owes them nothing. The only reason they were going to possess the promised land was, one, because he promised that he would, that God promised that they would have it, and two, because of the wickedness of the people that were there already. But he didn't owe them anything. He could have destroyed them there and then. He could have made a new nation out of Moses and still kept his promise. That's a fact. God didn't do it because Moses implored him not to. Moses prayed unto God not to. And so this is, proof positive that our prayers matter. It's not just God up there doing what he wants to do because he's going to, because he wants to do it. I mean, it is. He's all powerful. He's almighty. I trust his judgment more than my own. But Moses pleads on their behalf, and he raises up reasonable arguments for why God shouldn't do it. Now, God still could do it. He could do it if he wanted to, and he would be perfectly within his rights to. That being said, Moses still pleads, and there are, I forget which prophet it was. I think it was Isaiah, where he says that there should be men who go into the gap, who to plead for the people, not just to bring people to God, but also to plead that God, delay his wrath, so that so that people can be saved. And so I guess I copied a couple of verses where Moses gets into that. For I was afraid. I believe this is Moses speaking. Obviously, it's Moses because God's not going to be afraid. I was afraid of the anger and hot displeasure, wherewith the Lord was wroth against you to destroy you. But the Lord hearkened unto me. He hearkened. He listened. I asked, and he listened. He is a person, and so I pleaded, and he listened unto me. He's not a machine where I push a button and I get my Coke. He's a person. He had decided that he wants to do something a certain way, and I pleaded with him not to do it, and he listened to me. He hearkened unto me that time also. And the Lord was very wroth with Aaron to have destroyed him, because he's the one who created the golden calf. And I prayed for Aaron also at that same time. God pleaded for mercy. Moses pleaded for mercy for the people and also for his brother Aaron. Now that wasn't, and there were several instances where Israel rebelled against God and tempted God and made things worse for themselves. And so many times they rebelled, and God prospered them. Or God, held himself back from destroying them. I copied this verse, I believe, because it's a list of locations. And at Terah, and at Massa, and at Kibrothatava, ye provoked the Lord to wrath. Those 3 times. Likewise, when the Lord sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, go up to possess the land which I have given you. Then ye rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God, and believed him not, nor hearkened unto his voice. Moses is listing, listen, this is what happened before. It happened here, here, and here, and here. You guys don't listen, and then things go bad for us. So it's Deuteronomy. Moses is telling them again. He's telling this new generation, these are the things that you should know already, but I'm going to tell you right now for the sake of, so that it's very clear what's going on. Verses 26 through 29. I copied all of them. Let's find out why. I prayed therefore unto the Lord and said, O Lord, okay, so this is Moses' plea. This is Moses' argument. I prayed therefore unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, destroy not thy people and thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed through thy greatness, not our greatness, your greatness, which thou hast brought forth out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand. It was your power that got us out of Egypt. It wasn't anything that we did. Remember thy servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Please remember these 3 gentlemen who you started this nation with and who you made promises to. Look not unto the stubbornness of thy people. Please remember these good patriarchs, and please forget these rebellious, stubborn, and stiff-necked people. Please ignore this. Look not unto their stubbornness, look not unto their wickedness, nor to their sin. Lest the land whence thou broughtest us out say, so that it's Egypt. So, don't let the Egyptians gloat over you, God, because the Lord was not able to bring them into the land which he promised him, and because he hated them, he hath brought them out to slay them in the wilderness. Lord, don't let Egypt gloat that, this powerful God who gave us so many plagues and who walked them through the Red Sea, he did all that, but he couldn't get his people to possess a land. And so because he hated them, he killed them in the wilderness. Don't allow them to do that. God could do whatever he wants. He could have made a new nation out of Moses and still have kept the promise that he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm not sure if God cares what the Egyptians think or say about him. But Moses is still making the argument. I don't know how much weight these arguments have, but they're arguments nonetheless. And so it's like it's almost like it's the thought that counts. Moses is arguing, is pleading for God not to do the thing that he said he was going to do, even though there's plenty of reason to do it. They were given the commandment, do not make a graven image. That was the first commandment. That's the first thing they did. Moses was only away for a month and a third of a month. Yet they are thy people. Please remember this. They are thine people, and thine inheritance, which thou broughtest out of with a mighty power, and with thy stretched out arm. Lord, you did this for a reason. We've already wandered the desert for 40 years, and that generation is dead. Let's not go ahead and kill this generation too. I'm sorry. No, I got chronologically confused. This is not referring to the second generation. This is referring to the first. Lord, you brought them out of Egypt. They've rebelled against you, but please don't give up on them. Let's hold fast, tolerate them a little longer, Lord. Let's try to see if we can go ahead and possess this land. It didn't work out, but here we are in Deuteronomy preaching to a new generation who will hopefully listen. And they did. They did possess the promised land. Now, going into where? Here. Gonna go into Psalm 18.
Psalm 18. I will love thee, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, and my fortress, and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler, and the horn of my salvation, and my high tower. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. The sorrows of death compassed me, and the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. The sorrows of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, and cried unto my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken, because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also, and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon a cherub, and did fly, yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. At the brightness that was before him his thick clouds passed. Hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered at thy rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils. He sent from above, he took me, he drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy, and from them which hated me. But they were too strong for me. They prevented me in the day of my calamity. But the Lord was my stay. He brought me forth also into a large place. He delivered me, because he delighted in me. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands hath he recompensed me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord, and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his judgments were before me, and I did not put away his statutes from me. I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. Therefore hath the Lord recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his eyesight. With the merciful thou wilt show thyself merciful. With an upright man thou wilt show thyself upright. With the pure thou wilt show thyself pure. And with the froward thou wilt show thyself froward. For thou wilt save the afflicted people, but wilt bring down high looks. For thou wilt light my candle. The Lord my God will enlighten my darkness. For by thee I have run through a troop, and by my God have I leaped over a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust in him. For who is God save the Lord? Or who is a rock save our God? It is God that girdeth me with strength, and maketh my way perfect. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and setteth me upon my high places. He teacheth my hands to war, so that a bow of steel is broken by mine arms. Thou hast also given me the shield of thy salvation, and thy right hand hath holden me up, and thy gentleness hath made me great. Thou hast enlarged my steps under me, that my feet did not slip. I have pursued mine enemies and overtaken them, neither did I turn again till they were consumed. I have wounded them, that they were not able to rise. They are fallen under my feet. For thou hast girded me with strength unto the battle. Thou hast subdued unto me those that rose up against me. Thou hast also given me the necks of mine enemies, that I might destroy them that hate me. They cried, but there was none to save them, even unto the Lord. But he answered them not. Then did I beat them small as the dust before the wind. I did cast them out as the dirt in the streets. Thou hast delivered me from the strivings of the people, and thou hast made me the head of the heathen. A people whom I have not known shall serve me. As soon as they hear of me, they shall obey me. The strangers shall submit themselves unto me. The strangers shall fade away and be afraid out of their close places. The Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. It is God that avengeth me, and subdueth the people unto me. He delivereth me from mine enemies, yea, thou liftest me up above those that rise up against me. Thou hast delivered me from the violent man. Therefore will I give thanks unto thee, O Lord, among the heathen, and sing praises unto thy name. Great deliverance giveth he to his king, and showeth mercy to his anointed, to David, and to his seed for evermore.
Pause. I missed it. Is this a Psalm of David? Let me go back up. Probably is. To the chief musician, yep, a psalm of David, the servant of the Lord, who spake unto the Lord the words of this song in the day that the Lord delivered him from the hand of all of his enemies, and from the hand of Saul. And he said, it's a really long story about Theophilus, if you're not familiar with it, about David. Okay, look, David and Goliath, that little kid, he grew up, he became king. Before he became king, he had a really hard time, really staying alive, because the king at the time, the king who he helped, David and Goliath, the Goliath was holding the whole Israeli army, at bay, saying, "Hey, one of you come fight me." Saul was king at the time, and so David came up, slew Goliath. He helped out Saul, but it was understood that David would be king after Saul because Saul had abandoned God. Saul refused to listen to God and he refused to repent himself, and so the kingdom, it was known that the kingdom would then pass to David, and so Saul hated him ever since. Tried to kill him several times, and so David spent a lot of his life just fleeing from Saul and fleeing from those who would give him over to Saul. And so this psalm is speaking a lot about both Saul being an enemy and also of other kingdoms who fought against him after he became king. So there's a lot of history there. Do I have... So the timing is about here. So there it is. King David, 1054 BC. Now, as to the verses that I copied here, did I copy two together? Let's see. Okay, this first one is... I copied it because I am genuinely baffled by this exchange here. There are... Look, there are things in the Bible that I just simply don't understand. They're there, they're written, I can read them, I don't understand them. And so I just wanted to copy it out and just try to unravel this mystery. I'm not going to be able to do it in this recording, but I do wonder about it. He bound the heavens. I assume he here is God. Like, it sounds like a prophecy, but it's like, it seems like a lot of mixed imagery here, and I'm just wondering about it. He bound the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet. Okay, it's perfectly natural for everything under your feet to be dark. But he rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. And he made darkness his secret place. He hides in darkness? It's like, is this God? Is this Jesus? I don't really see a benevolent being hiding in darkness. His pavilion was round about him. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. So I guess like this is, I don't know if it's talking about God anymore, and I'm just wondering what this is about and what this is alluded to, or what this means to Scripture generally. I think I'll give myself this for homework and try to figure out what's being said here, because I genuinely don't know. Do I have stickies? I just want to write something on stick. Yeah. Just want to write that down somewhere, because I want to give myself that for homework, and just to figure out what it's getting in that, what this is about, because I genuinely don't know, and I'm curious. Now, here's an exchange that seems like it's contradictory to what I was saying before. I am casting them out because of their wickedness and not because of your righteousness. King David speaking here of himself. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanliness of my hands hath he recompensed me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord, and have not wickedly departed from my God. This is good. This seems not, well, yeah, a little arrogant. It might, it might seem that way. But what he's saying is that, look, I have kept myself, the cleanliness of I have kept the ways of the Lord. So it does seem a little arrogant, and it does seem a little contradictory. But then the next verse shows us the truth. Or verse 26 says, with the merciful thou shalt show thyself merciful. If God is merciful unto me, it is because I have been merciful unto others. With the upright thou shalt show thyself upright. God will be fair to me because I am fair with others. With the pure thou shalt show thyself pure. I'm not sure how to apply that to another example, but if I am pure, then God is pure, and if I am impure, then how will God deal with me? And with the forward, that will show thyself forward. With the proud, with the boastful, with those who are like, this is what is due to me, God will be the same way to them. So it's what goes around, what comes around. It's karma, but it's God saying, if this is your attitude, then this is my response to your attitude. If you're going to be forward, I'm going to be forward. Now, if you're going to be merciful, then I'm going to be merciful. Now, if you have no mercy, I will have no mercy on you. Okay? So when he says my righteousness, it's not just me. It's not because of my greatness. I think the next verse, yeah, 32. It is God that girdeth me with strength. If I have strength, it is because God has girdeth it. I don't know how to conjugate that verb, but God girdeth me with strength. God gives me strength. He maketh my way perfect, because I couldn't do it on my own. And so my righteousness comes from God. He makes it possible. He makes He makes the way, and he makes it possible for me to follow it. It's on me to go ahead and follow him. It's on me to be humble, to be merciful, to be upright, to be pure, so that God will be that way toward me, and not to be forward. Verse 50, great deliverance giveth he to his king, and showeth mercy to his anointed, to David, and to his seed forevermore. I copied this verse because of this. To his seed forevermore. Do I have that timeline? Again, here's David, 1504 BC. Fast forward 1500 years, and there's Christ. If you read the first couple of chapters of each of the Gospels, not all of them have the genealogies. I believe it's just... I don't think John does it all. Matthew does, and I believe Luke does. I'm not sure if Mark does. But the genealogies that are there that give the genealogy of Christ from... I believe Matthew starts with Abraham. So back over here, 2000 BC. He starts from there and tracks the genealogy all the way to Jesus. And it shows you that Jesus descends out of the tribe of Judah, chronologically. Let's follow along. Abraham has Isaac. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons, which are the 12 tribes of Israel. One of them, the fourth one, I believe, is Judah. And so Judah has his descendants, and they are, they are the ones who inherit or take the land of Jerusalem. It's not named after them, but that's the main city, or the portion that they had. And from there, so from the tribe of Judah came David. David was the second king of Israel. He's often regarded the greatest king of Israel because he was, a man after God's own heart. But this verse, great deliverance giveth he, God, to his king, and showeth mercy to his anointed, David, and to his seed forever. Following David's genealogy all the way to Christ, Christ is born out of that family. And so when it says to his seed forever, Solomon was David's son. He was king. And some of David's sons were also kings after that. And even though Israel was eventually overtaken, the kingdom was divided, and they were carried away onto Babylon. And ever since then, they hadn't been a nation until, I believe, 1947. Even though the nation got broken up, David's seed brought forth Jesus. And Jesus is king forever. You don't believe me? All right. What year is it? Why is it that these years are counting down in BC? Only recently did we start doing this whole BCE thing, which is before the Common Era. Okay? What was so common about that era? Was it the printing press? No. Was it some sort of invention? No. Was it the beginning of some empire? No. The Romans had been around for years. The Romans had been in charge for years. That wasn't it. What was common about that era? It was the birth of Christ. Our whole calendar, it came, the calendar itself came about, 300 years after the fact. But the number of years was based on the birth of Christ. And it's the same scheme that was used before. Before, people would say, in the 14th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, in the 30th year of Caesar Augustus, who they counted it that way. Who is king? Who is Caesar? Who's in charge? And how many years has he been in charge? That's how the calendar worked. That calendar is still in effect, or at least that scheme is still in effect. In that Christ was born, they did mess up the numbering system, because it's generally understood that Christ was born about 4 A.D. A.D. being Auto Domino, in the year of our Lord. So, understanding that mistake, we just make sure, it's too late now. It's been, it's off by 4 years. We're not going to try to fix it. Let's go ahead and keep the numbering system. But it's so it's 2019 right now. That's 2019 years after the birth of Christ. Minus 4 years, that really should be 2015. But you get my point. We're still using that same numbering system. And so when it says, to his seed forevermore, there are still Jews to this day. So the tribe of Judah is intact. It's preserved. A lot of different people, a lot of different leaders and despots and kings have tried to destroy that nation. And God has preserved them. God has preserved, David, his tribe, his seed forever. And so, when Christ was born, we now hail him as king, and we use his birth as the numbering of our years forevermore. And I think that's interesting. That's why I copied that verse. Going into Isaiah 29 now.
Isaiah 29. Woe to Ariel, the city where David dwelt. Add ye year to year, let them kill sacrifices. Yet I will distress Ariel, and there shall be heaviness and sorrow. And it shall be unto me as Ariel, and I will camp against thee round about, and will lay siege against thee with a mount. And I will raise forts against thee, and thou shalt be brought down, and shalt speak out of the ground, and thy speech shall be low out of the dust, and thy voice shall be as a one that hath a familiar spirit out of the ground, and thy speech shall whisper out of the dust. Moreover, the multitude of thy strangers shall be like small dust, and the multitude of the terrible ones shall be as chaff that passeth away, yea, it shall be at an instant suddenly. Thou shalt be visited of the Lord of hosts with thunder, and with earthquake, and great noise, with storm and tempest, and the flame of devouring fire. And the multitude of all the nations that fight against Ariel, even all that fight against her and her munition, and that distress her, shall be as a dream of a night vision. It shall even be as when a hungry man dreameth, and behold, he eateth, but he awaketh, and his soul is empty, or as when a thirsty man dreameth, and behold, he drinketh, but he awaketh, and behold, he is faint, and his soul hath appetite. So shall the multitude of all the nations be that fight against Mount Zion. Stay yourselves, and wonder, cry ye out, and cry. They are drunken, but not with wine, they stagger, but not with strong drink. For the Lord hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers, hath he covered. And the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, Read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I cannot, for it is sealed. And the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, Read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I am not learned. Wherefore the Lord said, Forasmuch as this people draw near me with their mouth, and with their lips do honour me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder. For the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent men shall be hid. Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, and their works are in the dark, and they say, Who seeth us? And who knoweth us? Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, He made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, He had no understanding? Is it not yet a very little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field? And the fruitful field shall be esteemed as a forest? And in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of obscurity, and out of darkness. The meek also shall increase their joy in the Lord, and the poor among men shall rejoice in the Holy One of Israel. For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off. That make a man an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just for a thing of naught. Therefore thus saith the Lord, who redeemed Abraham, concerning the house of Jacob, Jacob shall not now be ashamed, neither shall his face now wax pale. But when he seeth his children, the work of mine hands in the midst of him, they shall sanctify my name, and sanctify the Holy One of Jacob, and shall fear the God of Israel. They also that erred in spirit shall come to understanding, and they that murmured shall learn doctrine.
Pause. Oh my, there was a lot there. I only copied a few verses, but again, I'm going to give myself homework because I have no idea who Ariel is and what Ariel did that God would say, Woe unto Ariel, the city where David dwelt. That's going to be interesting, but that's going to have to wait until another episode. Again, homework for me. Now, of the verses that I did copy, and they weren't many, For the Lord hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets and the rulers, the seers hath he covered. I only copied this because it's interesting. I don't know if this is prophetic to what I was saying with the introduction of Malachi, that after Malachi there was no word from God. There were no prophets. There were no sayings. There was no inspired works of the Lord. It's like just nothing. Silence from God for 400 years until John the Baptist came. And so I'm wondering if this is part of that. For the Lord hath poured out upon you a spirit of deep sleep, where the prophets and the rulers are covered and they don't give anything. I'm just curious about that. And the book is delivered unto him that is not learned, saying, Read this, I pray thee. And he said, I am not learned. I copied this for another interesting reason, and it's this. I was in Bible study a couple days ago in church, and I paused and I forgot what we were talking about, but I did pause and say, guys, is there anyone in this room who can't read? Illiteracy still exists. It's still a thing, but it's like, it's so, at least in this country, it's so distant, because, generally it's like we almost take it for granted that we all have, at least most of us have access to education enough that we can read at least. I remember when I was working at the public defender's office, I just couldn't understand. There was a woman who came in and she needed to, I filled out a form for her because she didn't speak any English, and so I was speaking to her in Spanish and filling out the form for her. And when I finished the form, I said, okay, all you have to do is sign here and date here. And so she says, okay, hold on, I just need to copy it out. And I didn't know what she meant. She pulled out her identification card and put it next to the form that she had to fill out, and she literally copied out her name letter for letter. And so I tried to explain to her, well, you have to sign, and she's like, that's how I sign. I don't. She doesn't understand letters. She's not literate, so she can't read. But also, she doesn't like the letters of her name don't exist in her head, and that's something that I marveled at, and I felt great pity toward her. But at the same time, it's like it's something that like clicked in my head. Like this is something that you easily take for granted that you can read, that the Bible exists and it's the most translated book in the world, but there are so many people on earth who can't read it. Like it's not available to them. They are completely at the mercy of others to read the Bible to them. And so, God bless those who are willing, but God help those who are beholden onto someone who's trying to take advantage of that fact. Oh, you can't read the Bible. Let me tell you what it says, and let me put in some things that might help me. You know what I mean? It's like where I started with Malachi. It's like all Malachi says is, bring your tithes and offerings onto the altar. Let there be meat in my house. Let the servants of the Lord, let the service of the Lord be blessed. Let it have something to work with. Say somebody takes that and just adds something to it and says, and bless he whoever's reading this to you, give them $1, as if $1 was a thing back then. But the Bible is available to you, Theophilus. If you can read, you can pick it up and see it for yourself. And that's one of the things that I love about my church. We're what we call an open Bible church. And so you come in and you hear a sermon. The pastor doesn't say, take my word for it. He says, this is the verse. This is where it is. This is the verse, this is the citation. Go ahead and read it for yourself. Go ahead and read the chapter for yourself. See what the context is, and know that I'm not making this up, that this was written thousands of years ago for your benefit, and I'm reading it for myself so that I can follow God. I'm telling you what it says so that you can follow God, but don't just take my word for it. Read it for yourself. That's something I can do. That's something that I hope you can do, Theophilus. And it's something that we need to pause and consider and appreciate, that we can read. In the days of Isaiah, how many people could read? It's like it wasn't a given. Your family was rich enough to bring you to school so that you could read and write, or they weren't. You might have been I believe in Acts, Peter was a fisherman, and in Acts, I believe it says that how is it that these unlearned men know the Bible? Like they're preaching the gospel, even though they don't know. They're not educated. They're not well versed. They probably couldn't even read. Who knows? Now, ultimately, either Peter learned to read, or he dictated his books to him, because I believe First and Second Peter, they were written by him. But hey, maybe he dictated it to somebody else and they wrote it. I'm not sure. Another thing I'll need to look into, but just take a moment and praise God that you can read. The Bible is available to you. Take advantage of it, because back then in Isaiah's day, how many people could read? It wasn't a given. It wasn't a thing. And so people would have to preach the word, and people would have to commit it to memory. Things were written down, but not everybody could read it. Something to appreciate. Last verse I have here, wherefore the Lord saith, for as much as this people draw near unto me with their mouth. This is how I get confirmation, because earlier today, in this very episode, I said, people, they draw near unto me with their mouth, and with their lips honor me, but have removed their heart from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. This is like it ties everything up into a tiny little bow. This is what we've been talking about. Don't be the one who's serving God because you have to, or because you're just checking the boxes or scoring points for the afterlife. Do what you do for the Lord with joy. Do it because you want to. Do it because that's what's in your heart. Do it because you love God. And even if you don't know every single facet of the law, because you have a right heart with God, like, you just naturally do what pleases God. It's not about, it's not anymore. It may have been in the time of the law before Christ, where it was like check every box, dot every I, cross every T. And if you fail on something, then you have to get this sacrifice and that sacrifice and that sacrifice. We live in the time of grace where Christ is saying, I have died for your sins. I have redeemed you. Now, all you have to do is understand that you're a sinner, believe that I died for you, accept the sacrifice that I have made for you, and go ahead and try to live a right life for God. And how do you do that? Love God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's not complicated. It's not difficult. And all it requires is faith, a genuine desire to serve, and not checking the boxes and scoring points for the afterlife. That's not what this is about. We as human beings like to do that. We like to take everything and turn it into a game, put it in a box, give it rules, and say, I've done this much, and that should be enough. And God is saying, don't do that. Don't honor me with your lips, but in your heart, you're secretly far from me. You're secretly away from me. You secretly want to do something else with your life. If you do the right thing for the wrong reasons, you're still doing the wrong thing. So, Theophilus, don't be this. Don't draw near with your heart. With your mouth and with your lips, but draw away with your heart. Draw near with your heart, and your mouth and your lips will follow. Can't say it any clearer than that. So that's it for these. If you guys, if you, Theophilus, are enjoying these episodes, feel free to leave me a comment. If you have any questions or concerns or things that bugged you or didn't understand, I've given myself some homework, and so if there's anything that you would want to get into, certainly leave a comment, and we can certainly go from there. But I hope this has been a blessing to you. You guys take care, or you, Theophilus, specifically, take care. God bless, and I will see you later.